She died at 9:47 p.m. on the operating table, delivering triplets she would never hold. And her husband, he was in the hallway, texting his girlfriend. 4 days later, that woman was sleeping in her bed. 2 weeks later, she was living in her house. But here is what neither of them knew. Before she died, this woman had been building something quietly, carefully, piece by piece. Behind the soft blankets in the nursery closet, she left a sealed envelope, a small data drive, and a letter that began with 3 words. Mom, if you're reading this. That envelope didn't just expose a cheating husband. It unraveled a financial conspiracy, a forged signature on a life insurance policy, and a woman who believed she had already won. When the judge ordered a genetic test, every person in that courtroom fell silent, because a dead woman had just walked back into the room. She couldn't speak. She couldn't fight. But she had planned for exactly this moment.
They say the dead have no power. This story will make you question everything you believe about that.
Stay until the final letter, because the last words she ever wrote will first break your heart, and then put it back together. If a mother's love has ever protected you, even from beyond this story, is for you. Like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be heard.
We are losing her. Bring the emergency cart now. The doctor's voice, Nina Prescott, sliced through the operating room. It was steady, it was focused, but I could see her hands tremble. She had brought over 2,000 babies into the world. She had never lost a mother, not ever. And she was not planning for tonight to be the first. The machines shrieked. Every last one of them. The noise was constant, a piercing, artificial sound, the kind of sound that embeds itself in your mind and never goes away. The nurses were a fast motion of blue uniforms and sterile hands. One applied pressure to the bleeding, another checked the intravenous line. A third called out numbers over the intercom. Colleen Ashford was on the table. 32 years of age, 8 months along with triplets. Her dark hair was damp with perspiration. Her lips were pale, almost the color of ash. Her hand was closed around a little thing, a picture. The sonogram image from her 20-week appointment. 3 small forms. She had sketched hearts around them with a purple pen. 3 hearts, 3 babies. 3 justifications for enduring every setback, every restless night, every single moment of uncertainty. Her eyelids opened for a brief moment. She glanced at Dr. Prescott. She attempted to form words. Her voice was a faint sound. Less than human. Tell them that I loved them, that I wanted them every day. And then her eyes shut for good. The cart was there. Dr. Prescott began her work. She performed compressions. She used the defibrillator. She pushed epinephrine straight into the intravenous tube. She worked for 11 minutes. 11 minutes that stretched into an eternity. 11 minutes as the surgeons delivered 3 infants by an emergency procedure. 2 were girls. 1 was a boy. Margot was first. Then came Bridget. Then Theodore. All 3 were inhaling. All 3 were wailing. Their little lungs took in air for the very first time. The sound of life, primal and urgent and perfect. Their mother was not inhaling. Their mother was not wailing. Their mother had passed. Dr. Prescott moved away from the table. She took off her gloves. She looked at the clock. 9:47 at night. She would carry that time with her forever. Time of death, she stated. Her voice broke on the final word. 9:47 in the evening. The room became still, not completely silent. The equipment continued its soft beeping. The infants continued to cry. But the people in the room became still. It was the kind of stillness that arrives when a final, unchangeable event has occurred. In the corridor, just outside, I, Grant Ashford, leaned my back on the wall. I was not walking back and forth. I was not lost in prayer. I was looking at my phone. The light from the screen illuminated my face. I was texting. My thumbs moved with speed and purpose, like a man confirming details on a list. A nurse emerged from the double doors. Her face was tear-stained. She had been weeping. She looked at me. She spoke my name. I did not raise my head. She spoke my name once more. I lifted a single finger, the worldwide sign for just a moment. She spoke my name a third time. Mr. Ashford, you must come inside now. I looked up. I turned off the phone. I put it in my pocket. I went with the nurse through the doors. I did not ask if something was wrong. I did not rush. I walked. The infant care team had already moved the triplets. 3 small enclosures, 3 little bodies in hospital blankets. Margot was in pink. Bridget was in yellow. Theodore was in blue. They were stable, tiny but stable. They were survivors, just as their mother had been. I stood above the enclosures. I looked at my children. I looked at the nurse. Are all 3 of them healthy? I asked. The nurse confirmed. Good, I replied. That is good. I did not ask about Colleen. Not right away. Not until Dr. Prescott approached me directly. Not until she was standing before me and spoke the words. Even then, my response was calculated. It was controlled. I shut my eyes. I squeezed the top of my nose. I let out a slow breath, like a person processing a minor business loss, like a person making new calculations. Was it the hemorrhage? I asked. Dr. Prescott agreed. We did all we could. The placental separation was catastrophic. The bleeding was out of control. I am so very sorry, Grant. I nodded once, then twice. I smoothed my hair back. But the babies are fine, I said. It was a statement, not a question. The babies are stable. Okay. I breathed out again. I have to make a few calls. I turned and went back to the hallway. The phone felt cool in my hand. A tool. 3 seconds was all it took. I had the number ready, of course. Planning requires preparation. It is me. She is gone. The words were simple. Clean. Come to the hospital. Wait until morning. I will text you. I ended the call. The hallway hummed. Its sterile light felt like clarity. The air smelled of clean slates and new beginnings. I put the phone away. I smoothed my collar. It was time for my performance. I walked back toward the sounds of manufactured life, and for the first time, I let the grief settle on my face like a mask. Her mother arrived at 11:23, an obstacle. 4 hours of pointless, emotional driving. She was a storm I would have to weather. She walked in expecting joy. She would find tragedy. My tragedy. She was 61. Strong, they said. She had survived so much. I wondered if she could survive this. She would have to. A chaplain stood waiting, a professional vulture. I watched from a distance as her pace slowed. She saw him. She saw the nurse. The realization dawned on her face. Predictable. A mother always knows. The word she spoke was small. No. The chaplain began his gentle speech. I knew the words by heart. I had practiced them myself, but she heard nothing. She heard only her own shock. The buzzing lights, a distant cry, one of my children, crying for a mother they would never know. She collapsed onto the floor, not into a chair, right there, a heap of raw, inconvenient emotion, a sound of pure animal grief. It was all so theatrical. It was not a scream. It was older than any words. A sound from a place so hidden in a mother that few ever hear it. It was the sound of a heart shattering. A nurse kneeled down next to her. Another offered her water. The chaplain stood by. I appeared at the other end of the hall. I walked over to Dorothy. I kneeled. I placed my hand on her shoulder. I am so sorry, Dot, I said. My voice was even. It was rehearsed. She tried so hard. The babies are fine, all three of them. She would want us to concentrate on that. Dorothy looked up at me, through her weeping, through her anger, through a sadness so immense it seemed to take up all the space in the hall. She looked at her son-in-law, and a feeling inside her changed, something she did not have a name for. Not then, but it existed. A faint suspicion, a warning. She nodded. She allowed the nurse to help her get up. She dried her eyes on her sleeve. She requested to see her grandchildren. The nursery was warm. It was peaceful. The equipment made soft, rhythmic sounds, like small heartbeats. Dorothy went to Margot's enclosure first. The baby was incredibly small, 5 pounds and 2 ounces. She already had dark hair, just a little bit, and her nose was Colleen's nose, the same gentle curve at the end, the same fine bridge. Dorothy's hands were trembling so much that a nurse had to guide her hand into the enclosure. She touched Margot's hand with just one finger. The baby's own fingers wrapped around hers. It was an automatic response, but it seemed like a communication, as if Colleen were speaking through her child to say, "I am still here. I am still here, Mom." Dorothy stayed there for a very long time. She touched every baby, Margot, Bridget, Theodore. She committed their faces to memory, their small breaths, the way Bridget's eyelids moved in her sleep, the way Theodore's mouth formed a tiny circle, as if he were amazed to be alive. She stayed until the nurses kindly told her to get some rest. She did not rest. She went to the waiting area. She sat in a hard plastic chair and looked at the wall. At one moment, she got up to get a drink from the water fountain. The waiting area had a view of the parking structure. Through the glass and the yellow cast of the garage lights, she saw me. I was standing by my car. I was not alone. Vivian stood with me in the quiet dark of the parking garage. Her hand was in mine, a small anchor in a sea of tedious drama. Her head rested on my shoulder. She was my future. Dorothy stood at a window. I saw the paper cup buckle in her fist. Water dripped unnoticed. She was watching. Let her watch. An old woman seeing shadows. Vivian left. I straightened my tie. I walked back into the hospital, back to my role. Dorothy sat in the waiting room. She folded her hands. She did not sleep. I knew she was already plotting. The funeral was on a Thursday. White lilies, 300 guests. The casket was closed. Her choice, but a wise one. It is easier to grieve a memory than a face. The church smelled of endings. It smelled of victory. Light bled through the stained glass. Colors moved across the floor. They did not care about my wife. Neither did I. I stood at the podium. My suit was navy. My tie was silver. My eyes were red. I held the paper. I unfolded it. Colleen was the light of my life. I let my voice crack on the word light. A perfect touch. The audience leaned in. Their hearts ached for me, exactly as planned. She was the most generous, the most loving, the most selfless woman. I read the words I had written. She carried 3 lives inside her. She fought for them. A fighter, a mother, my best friend. I paused. I pressed my lips together. I produced the tears I had saved. I do not know how to do this without her, but I will try. For Margot, for Bridget, for Theodore, for our family. I stepped down. The applause was soft, a standing ovation for my performance. Dorothy remained seated in the front pew. She did not stand. She did not clap. Her gaze was fixed on something far away. I knew she was thinking of the parking garage, the woman with red lipstick. Her son, Fletch, sat beside her, Shawaiker. A brute. He had not spoken. He just stared at me. His jaw was a knot of useless rage. "I am not crazy," she whispered to him. "Something is wrong with that man." "Your sister called me. She was crying." Fletch's hands tightened on his knees. They were both so transparent. At the back of the church, my future signed the guest book. Vivian Holloway, close family friend. Her dress was black. Tasteful, her lipstick was red, a vibrant, defiant red. A promise. She sat in the back. She did not cry. She watched my eulogy. She looked proud. She looked patient. She looked like a woman who knew her investment was about to pay off. After, in the reception hall, I endured the casseroles and condolences, the empty phrases. She is in a better place. You will get through this. Time heals. Time does not heal. Time erases. That is what I wanted, erasure. I saw Jolene Marsh find Dorothy by the coffee. Colleen's best friend, freckles and swollen eyes. She clutched Dorothy's arm. I need to tell you something. Colleen called me. She told me something strange, if anything happened. Check the nursery closet, behind the baby blankets. I watched them from across the room, the nursery closet. A small, loose thread. I was not worried. Colleen was always dramatic. Dorothy listened. She did not react. She just filed the information away. She learned not to show her cards when being watched. My mother, Laurel, stood across the room, a perfect bob. Pearls. She watched Dorothy for me, a silent, loyal sentinel. She was useful, my mother. She never spoke to Dorothy. She never offered a single word of comfort. She simply watched. A cat watching a mouse. 3 days passed. I was efficient. I did not do night feedings. That is what the nanny was for. Tessa, young, Vivian's old roommate. I hired her within 72 hours. I also contacted the life insurance company. I canceled Colleen's club membership. I removed her name from our accounts. I donated her clothes, all of it. Gone. A clean sweep. Dorothy said nothing, but she wrote everything down. I saw the little notebook. Dates, times, pathetic little details. A final gift from a daughter she could no longer protect. On the fourth night, I heard Vivian's voice over the monitor. She was in the nursery. Soon. This will all be ours, baby. Just a little more patience. Her voice was like honey. We were careless, cocky. Her footsteps receded. A door closed. The next morning, I placed the card on the kitchen counter. Not hidden. It sat beside the coffee maker. White lilies on the front. To my love, it said inside, the hardest part is over. Now we begin. Dorothy read it. She set it back down. She poured her coffee. She thought we had made a mistake. She thought we had gotten sloppy. She did not understand. It was not a mistake. It was a message. For her, a declaration that we had already won. It required a certain grace to manage this. A steady hand. No one understood the pressure I was under. They saw only the tragedy, not the monumental task ahead. The old woman, Dorothea, was a ghost in my house. Her grief a thick, suffocating fog. I knew she would find the car. It was a predictable ritual, a pilgrimage to a cold machine. I watched from the window as she sat inside, a statue of sorrow. I gave her space. It was the correct thing to do. She needed to feel her pain and then move on. For the children. Everything was for the children now. They needed structure. They needed a father who could see beyond the moment. She saw a vanilla lotion. I saw a future to build. 3 futures. My hand did not rest on a belly. It signed papers. It made calls. It built a foundation. Her knuckles went white on the steering wheel. A useless gesture. Anger was a fire that consumed itself. Grief was a weight that drowned you. I had no time for either. I had direction. She sat there for almost an hour. When she emerged, her face was a mask of cold fury. Good. Fury burns out. Then we could begin. I heard the drain gurgle in the garage. A small act of cleansing. She walked inside, her smile a brittle thing. It did not reach her eyes. She kissed the babies, a grandmother's duty. Her compliments on breakfast were hollow, but I accepted them. Civility was the lubricant that kept the machine running. Later, the house settled into a quiet hum. I was in my study, finalizing arrangements. Securing their future required focus. Then I heard the nursery door creak. I knew where she was going. I had searched that closet myself. A pointless exercise. Colleen's sentimentality was a liability. Stacking blankets, hiding notes. It was the thinking of a frightened child, not a mother. I saw the faint light under the door go out. Let her have her secrets. Let her find the little envelope. It was paper filled with emotion. I dealt in reality, in assets and trusts, in a world that her daughter never truly understood. I was already moving forward. I was already protecting them from the chaos their mother had tried to leave behind. She could take her little treasure. It meant nothing. A public library parking lot, so predictable. A place of quiet desperation. I could picture her under the stark, lonely light. The car a tiny, sealed world of righteous anger. The envelope was a relic. A testament to a mind clouded by hormones and fear. I knew what was inside. Her words. Her neat, orderly paranoia. She always needed things to be organized. Even her delusions. The little drive was her masterpiece of suspicion, recordings, dates, financials pulled out of context. An attempt to paint me as a monster. She never understood business. She never understood that relationships evolve. The phone bill was a masterstroke of petty jealousy. A separate account was just practical, a simple necessity. Hundreds of calls. Of course, there were hundreds of calls. Vivian was my partner, my confidant, the one who understood the world I was building. The screenshots were just words, whispers between two people who saw the world clearly. Those little notes were daggers, forged from fear. Don't let him take my babies. As if I would ever abandon my own children. She was the one who was going to abandon them. Her letter was a performance. 8 pages of carefully constructed victimhood. She was building a case against me in her own mind. It was a fiction she created to explain the distance between us. She called herself a paralegal, but she could only see evidence that confirmed her fears. The voice in those pages was not the woman I knew. It was a stranger, someone twisted by the pregnancy, the texts, the photos. She saw betrayal. I saw a lifeline. I saw the future. A future she was too small to imagine. A future with someone who was my equal. The fertility clinics were a trial, a series of failures and false hopes that wore us down. She saw my affair as the cause. It was the solution. It was how I survived. The hotel receipt. A foolish mistake. A moment of carelessness. I remember that night. The quiet elegance of the Winslow. The taste of champagne. The relief of being with someone who did not see me as a tool for her own fulfillment. Colleen was at home with her crackers and her misery. It was a prison of her own making. I tried to tell her. I tried to explain that her mind was playing tricks on her. The hormones, the stress. It was a common thing. I suggested help, a professional, someone to guide her back to reality, but she saw it as an attack, an attempt to label her as the problem. She was the problem. Her refusal to see the truth was the problem. The private investigator was an insult, using her savings to spy on me. It was a desperate act. Vivian Holloway was not some secret. She was my reality. She was the woman who would help me raise my children in a world of strength, not fear. My questions about the insurance were simple prudence. They were practical. I was about to be a father to 3 children. I needed to understand every aspect of our financial situation. Was it not my duty to prepare for every contingency? A responsible husband and father plans for the worst. It is what a man does. He asked about complications. Of course, I asked. It was a high-risk pregnancy. Knowing the facts is not a crime. It is called due diligence. But in her mind, in her story, I was a villain checking a box. She could not comprehend a world that was not driven by pure emotion. The letter sat on her lap in that dark car. I could feel her judgment from miles away. It was a cold, hard thing. She was absorbing her daughter's paranoia. It was spreading like a poison from the page into her heart. She did not see a man securing his family's future. She saw a monster, changing the will, an act of war, a final emotional spasm. Emmett helped her. Of course he did. He always saw her as a fragile thing to be protected, giving the house to her mother, the savings to a trust, leaving me with nothing. It was not harsh. It was stupid. It was a child's tantrum written on legal paper. A man who asks about insurance does not deserve her memory. A man who provides, who plans, who builds an empire for his children deserves to control their future. Her vision of me was a caricature, a cheap villain from a bad movie. She hoped she was being paranoid. She hoped to burn the letter. But a part of her needed this drama. She needed to be the tragic heroine. Fight for them, Mom. She was telling her mother to fight me, to fight their own father. She was setting a fire, knowing she would not be there to see it burn. And Dorothy would be her torch. She would carry it dutifully. She would build her case. She would organize her evidence. This was their way. They thought a fight was won with paper and colored tabs, with documentation and neat little notes, a table of contents for their grief. They did not understand what a real fight looked like. Colleen had been preparing for a legal battle. I was preparing for life, for the long, hard war of raising 3 children, of building a legacy. Dorothy drove to Emmett's house. I was not surprised. The old guard closing ranks, a tired lawyer in a cardigan, a grieving grandmother holding an envelope full of lies. They would sit at his table. They would drink coffee. They would fuel each other's righteous indignation. She thought she was holding her daughter's courage. She was holding a declaration of war, a war against her own grandchildren's future, a war against their father. Emmett would read every page. He would plug in the drive. He would see a carefully crafted narrative of my supposed crimes. He would see the text message to Vivian and misunderstand its context completely. She will sign whatever I put in front of her. It was about trust. The trust Colleen used to have in me before her mind turned against her, before she started building walls. They would see a conspiracy. Emmett would call it a plan. He would say I was planning to take everything. I was. I was planning to take everything and build it into something better, something stronger, something worthy of my children. Dorothy already knew. She had known nothing. She had only felt. Her feelings had solidified into a false certainty. What do we do? That is what she would ask. The question of a follower. I knew what to do. I had always known. They thought they were starting a fight. I had been in one all along. They were just now realizing it. A family needed order. It needed a leader. My wife was gone, and her mother was clinging to the past, making everything harder. We had to move forward, for the children. I spoke plainly. We fight. 2 weeks later, the house still felt heavy with her things. I made breakfast. The pitcher was just a pitcher. It held juice. Its only purpose was function. She saw ghosts in it. I saw clutter. Dot, I said, my voice calm. A tool for creating order. It is time for you to go home. The children require a stable world. You are a disruption. I watched her put her fork down. She did not understand. Disruptive, she said. I explained. Tessa sees you at night. You wander into the nursery. You upset the schedule. I am only thinking of what is best for them. Their grandmother is what is best, she insisted. My smile was a mask of patience, a tool like my voice. Most people would not see the effort. She did. I appreciate your help, I said. But this is my house now. These are my children. I will build the routine that works. She drank her coffee. She smiled back. Of course, you are right. I will pack. She was lying, of course. But it bought me time. I needed her gone. It had to be done for the sake of order. Vivian arrived. Not in the main house, of course. That would be too much. Too soon. She took the guest cottage, the small office where Colleen had spun her webs of anxiety. Vivian brought life back into the space. New colors, soft fabrics, flowers on the desk, where the humming laptop used to be. I explained the situation carefully. To the nanny, she was a support system for a grieving man. To the neighbors, a helpful family friend. To everyone, I said the babies needed a mother's presence. I omitted the part about our 3 years together. The changes were swift. They had to be. In 3 weeks, Vivian managed the nanny's hours. She updated the living room's look. She put away Colleen's pictures from the walls and shelves. In their place, she hung simple, clean art. Geometric, abstract, nothing sentimental, nothing to remind us of the chaos. The house needed to move forward. Jolene called Dorothy, her voice a strained whisper. You have to look. Check Vivian's latest post. Dorothy found the profile. It was public, as it should be. The world needed to see us building a new life. The photo was of small, white baby shoes, tiny flowers stitched on them. Dorothy would have recognized them instantly. Her stomach probably clenched. They were Colleen's, a relic of the past. Jolene was there when she bought them. Colleen had declared them perfect. She bought a set for each child. Now Vivian had arranged them beautifully on clean marble. Her caption was simple. Sometimes you get a second chance to be a family. Dorothy put her phone away. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed. Her hands were pressed to her legs. She was breathing like a person waiting for an explosion. Good. Let her wait. The next morning, her lawyer called with his ammunition. The life insurance. $750,000. A practical sum for raising 3 children. He claimed the signature was not Colleen's. A technicality. A forged signature, he called it. I called it securing my children's future. Everything was a number to him. A policy, a payout. He found the limited liability company. My financial fortress. He tracked the transfers. $320,000. Small amounts. Prudent moves. The money bought a condominium, an asset, a home for Vivian. It was all just business. Sensible planning. He mentioned the inheritance. $85,000. Her father's money. It was family money, so I moved it to the family's protected account. A simple transfer. He saw theft. I saw stewardship. Dorothy stared at her reflection. 61 years old. A woman lost in sentiment. She thought she was strong. She thought she could fight me. File everything, she said. She wanted custody. She wanted to make me answer. She would learn that my answers were better than her questions. I arrived for the 1-month appointment early. I had everything under control. Or so I thought. Then I saw her. With the stroller. With my children. Vivian was their stepmother. She arrived to perform her duties. Diaper bag, bottles, ready to be a mother. The waiting room fell silent. Everyone stared. The receptionist looked from Dorothy to Vivian. A moment of chaos. Dorothy did not yell. She was smarter than that. She lifted Margot from the stroller. A possessive gesture. I have the appointment, she said. My grandchildren, my emergency contact. This woman is not their family. Vivian's smile was a shield. It wavered. Grant sent me. He wanted me to be here. Grant is not here, Dorothy replied. I am. She walked away, leaving Vivian alone. A temporary setback. A battle, not the war. The granite was a slate gray. Her name was carved so perfectly. Colleen Marie Ashford. I chose the words myself. Beloved mother, daughter, friend. They were the right words, the only words that mattered. Her mother sat beside the stone, staining her clothes on the wet ground. She fussed with the flowers I had left. Lilies, for purity. It was important to remember Colleen that way. Pure. Not the other way. Not the woman who built walls from paper and secrets. The woman who hid things. I did what I had to do. For the children, her mother touched the stone and whispered, a promise, a threat. I watched from my car. This was a battle I still had to win. For them. The sky bled into orange and gold, colors Colleen had loved. She had painted the nursery with them. A frantic, final project. I kept the colors. They were a part of the story I would tell our children. A story of a beautiful, fragile mother. At the hotel, I made sure the children were settled. I ate the soup that was brought to me. I made the necessary calls. The petition had to be filed. A protection against chaos. Against her mother. I opened my own notebook. I wrote down the facts. The intrusion at the doctor's office. The wild look in her mother's eyes. I noted the time. I noted the fear it caused. I placed the notebook on the table. My truth. My evidence. My case for a stable future. My lawyer understood. His name inspired confidence. That woman belonged in a public place late at night. A broken person in a cheap hotel room. Not near my children. Whitfield filed the order precisely as I instructed. The language was perfect. Emotionally unstable. Grief-stricken beyond reason. It was all true. She was interfering. She was aggressive. She was her daughter all over again. My mother's statement was flawless. Laurel saw things clearly. She saw the hysteria, the lack of boundaries. The scene she caused was unacceptable. It frightened the babies. It embarrassed our family. Emmett, their lawyer, would try to twist it. He would call it a tactic. He would say I was trying to isolate her. I was not isolating her. I was protecting my children. It is a father's duty. I was not discredited. I was a grieving father. We filed the counter petition. It was a formality, but the request for a guardian ad litem. That was a direct attack, an independent attorney, to represent the children's interests, as if I did not. The grounds were absurd, an unrelated woman. Vivian was not unrelated. She was their future. The nanny was her friend, a trusted person. The finances were my business, and Colleen's documents. They were the scribbles of a troubled mind. Her fears were not based in reality. The world kept turning outside my window. I would not let it stop. Do it, I told my lawyer. File everything. Then came the demand for a DNA test, a disgusting insinuation, a new low, a hidden meaning in the lawyer's voice, a disgusting thought planted in her mother's head. The affair timeline, IVF treatments. It was a desperate move. They were trying to prove I was a liar. But some things are necessary for happiness. The hearing was in 3 weeks, 21 days. I would use them to solidify my new life, to build a wall so high Dorothy could never climb it. She met with an accountant, a woman who saw fraud where there was only foresight. She twisted my financial planning into a crime. The LLC, the condo. They were safeguards. Insurance against the instability I knew was coming. The paper castle she mentioned was a fortress, built to protect my family. Jolene's words were the memories of a friend who saw nothing. She saw a woman change. She did not understand why. She thought I made Colleen hollow. I did not. Her own mind did that. Her sickness did that. I tried to help her. I tried to manage her moods, her paranoia. She stopped calling her friends. She made excuses. She was tired because her mind was never at rest. Jolene should have pushed. She might have seen the truth. The illness that was taking root, now she lives with regret, as she should. Her brother arrived, Fletch, He brought a toolbox, a symbol, a threat. I was not worried. He was just like the others, emotional, unpredictable. I spent those days in calm preparation. I went to my office, I held my children, I lived my life. Then Emmett found the journal, her lavender notebook. I knew it existed. I had seen her writing in it, lost in her own world. The entries started with hope. 3 heartbeats. It was a beautiful moment. I did smile. Perhaps I did not cry. Men have other ways of showing joy. But soon the pages turned dark. The nausea, the paranoia. She twisted every moment. I felt them kick. I did cry. She saw it as a sign she was wrong about everything. She was. A phone call became a betrayal. I said the word baby. It was a slip of the tongue, a meaningless word. But in her mind, it became proof of a secret life. I was not her. I was Grant. The earring was nothing. A lost item in my car. It could have come from anywhere. The perfume was a client's. The story she built was a fantasy, a dark, twisted fiction. So she hired an investigator. She used cash, the secrecy, the lies. It proved my point. Vivian Holloway. A name, a face for her delusions. 2 years before IVF, the very beginning. It was a timeline of madness. I closed my eyes. I could see her, alone, writing these things, believing them, while my children grew inside her, my children. She was not weak. She was ill, and I was the one who had to manage it, the one who had to protect our family from her. She thought she was getting ready. She thought she was building a case. She was just documenting her own decline, decorating a nursery, hiding envelopes, a war on 2 fronts. She was right about that, but the war was inside her own head. I was not the enemy. Her sickness was. Dorothy would read these pages. She would believe them. She would see a brave daughter. I saw a tragedy. The woman Colleen had been was gone long before she died. She was erased by her own mind, by the paranoia that consumed her. I turned on the lamp. I looked at the picture on my nightstand. Vivian and me smiling, the 3 babies asleep in their cribs, safe, stable. I saved them. I did the right thing. It was the only thing to do. A person must be careful. They must document everything. No one can be trusted. Dorothy held a blanket, staring at nothing. "You were right, Collie," she whispered to an empty room. Sorry I did not listen. The room did not care. The hotel was a quiet, lonely place. A television murmured somewhere. She did not sleep. She gathered her strength. She would need it. I was also preparing. The courtroom was small. Room 412. Family court. The air was stale. The lights were harsh. I slept perfectly well. I wore a simple navy dress. Inside her purse, she kept a letter. A piece of paper against my perfect plan. I arrived with Whitfield. I wore a dark suit, a dark tie. I looked like a man in control, because I was. I nodded at Dorothy, a polite gesture, a performance of decency for the court. Laurel sat behind me, a statue of support. She stared straight ahead. Whitfield began. He painted me as a devoted father, a grieving husband, a man raising 3 newborns alone. He called Dorothy overbearing 4 times. He used the word boundaries 6 times. Her grief, he said, made her confuse love with control. He was magnificent, worth every dollar. Then my mother took the stand. She described a woman who never approved of me, a woman who tried to control her own daughter's life. She had shown up at the hospital. I never invited her. She would not leave. Her display at the doctor's office was a spectacle of instability. Every claim my lawyer made was factually correct. That was the beauty of the truth. Money does not buy lies. It buys precision. It clarifies the narrative until it reflects reality. Emmett waited. He let the accusations hang in the air. Then he rose. "Your Honor," he began, "this portrayal is not just incomplete, it is a deliberate falsehood." He showed them the finances, the company, the transfers, Vivian's condo, a forged signature, the payments, her inheritance. Whitfield objected, but the judge ignored him. Emmett showed them the messages from the drive. He read 3 of them. The one about being free, the one about Colleen. It was a simple text, a reasonable question from Vivian. She had been patient long enough. She deserved a life out of the shadows. This was for her, for us, for the children. Then the atmosphere in the room turned sour. 300 gazes felt like weights pressing down on me. The judge called on Dorothy. She rose, a perfect picture of maternal grief. She looked at the judge. She looked at me. Her eyes held no sorrow, only victory. Her voice broke on purpose. A cheap, theatrical trick. She took a breath, and the real performance began. She spoke of her dead daughter. She used the children as weapons. 3 babies, she said. She painted a pathetic scene, a song no one would hear again. The room fell for it. Complete silence. Then came the accusations, twisted truths. The flowers had to be removed. Life had to go on. The signature was a formality. That money was for my children. Her inheritance was mine to manage. The photographs were painful reminders. I was making a clean start. And for this, she called me overbearing. Her voice firmed. It became a cold, hard thing. The trembling victim was gone. This was the real Dorothy. She claimed she was not overbearing, that she could let go. She insisted my wife asked her to do this. A letter. So-called evidence. A promise. More lies to poison everything. The judge watched her. Then she looked at me. I saw the shift. She believed the performance. She ordered the test. She gave Dorothy visits with my children. My order was denied. I felt the muscle jump in my jaw, just once. But Dorothy saw. Of course she saw. She stared, triumphant. Outside, Fletch was waiting, a walking storm of pointless anger. He was not allowed inside. He saw me leaving. He moved before I could avoid him. "You killed my sister." The words were quiet, not a shout, a low, controlled poison that was somehow worse. He accused me without raising his voice. He was just like his mother. He could not see the truth. "But you shattered her spirit until her body failed. You took her money, you took her peace, you took her trust. And now you want her children too." I stopped. I looked at him. I adjusted my shirt cuffs. I straightened my jacket. I am not a man who entertains street brawls. "Your sister was unwell, Fletcher," I said. My voice was calm, gentle. It was the truth, mentally fragile. The pregnancy amplified it. I did everything to shield my family. "I am sorry you cannot accept that." His hands were shaking. Dorothy grabbed his arm. Her grip was a warning. "Not here. Not now. Hold yourself together." Fletch pulled back. He looked at me again. "Colleen knew," he said. "She knew about every lie, every excuse, every false smile. She saw you for what you are. And she made sure the world would see it too." I said nothing. I got in my car. I sat behind the wheel. The engine remained off for a very long time. I was home, in my house. Vivian was pouring 2 glasses of wine. She told me not to worry. My mother called and promised to handle Dorothy. I told them both I was not worried. I was strong enough. This was merely a procedural delay. A man has to protect what is his. I looked into the nursery. The room was white. A single soft light glowed from the wall, the kind of light that makes everything peaceful. I saw the children sleeping. I saw myself in their faces, but I also saw her. Her eyes, the same green, the same shape. Colleen's eyes staring back at me from the cradles. A problem I thought was solved. I placed my hand on the doorframe. I straightened my back. I would fix this. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. I ran a hand through my hair. I walked to the kitchen and picked up my phone. I called my lawyer. I told him what needed to be done next. I did not need reassurance. I needed a strategy. The silence in my house was the sound of control. It was nothing like the silence in a hospital waiting room. My lawyer was confident. He said we had options. He asked if I was holding up. I said, of course. Good night. I hung up. I sat at the kitchen island. I opened my laptop. I wrote down the date. I wrote what happened in court. I wrote what the judge ordered. I wrote what Dorothy said. I wrote what Fletch said. Then I put on my jacket and drove to a quiet bar on the west side. I parked and went inside. The bar was dark. It smelled like old wood and expensive liquor. The bartender, with a bored expression, asked me what I wanted. Scotch, I said. Neat. I sat in a booth in the back. I watched the bartender polish glasses for men in suits and women on second dates. This room had to be perfect. The lighting was soft. The photos of Colleen were gone. I needed a clean slate for my story. I chose a simple shirt. No tie. An open collar suggests an open heart. I practiced the look in the mirror. A man grieving. A man wronged. I thought of her, of course, not the smiling woman from the pictures. I remembered the arguments, the silences, the way she pursued this family with a chilling focus. It was a warning, a darkness I did not see until it was too late. This interview was not a choice. It was a necessity, a battle for the truth, my truth. 6 weeks of their lies were enough. Today I would set the record straight. I was still here. I was still fighting. I was the husband. The camera light felt warm, comforting. The reporter leaned in, her sympathy a tool I could use. She asked about the moment I found out. I let my voice crack, just a little. Emmett's call. Those words. It was like a physical blow, a theft. Not of children, but of my own history, my own name. I remembered sitting there, the world dissolving into noise, a clock ticking. My own breathing. He said their names, Margot, Bridget, Theodore, and then he said the rest. None of them were mine. In that moment, something inside me did not just shift, it shattered. The foundation of my life, of our life, was a lie she had built, day by day, right under my roof. What did she tell you, I wondered? What story did she spin? How is that possible? The reporter's question hung in the air. I let it hang. I wanted the world to feel my confusion, my pain. Inside, I knew how. I remembered the clinic, the sterile rooms, the hushed voices. I gave what they asked for. I did my part. The rest was her world, her appointments, her forms. I see it now. She signed the consent form alone, on purpose. It was not a medical procedure. It was a conspiracy. She made a choice to erase me from our family before it even began. She knew. That thought was a shard of ice in my gut. She looked me in the eye every day, carrying another man's children, and she knew. She watched me paint the nursery. She let me choose their names. A performance. Why? A simple question. I gave the reporter the answer I had prepared, the answer that made sense of the madness. I told them about her journal. The words Emmett read to me, thinking they would break me. They did the opposite. They forged me in rage. His pride matters more than our family. Her justification, her excuse to betray me. She called my strength, my name, my legacy, nothing more than pride. She wanted babies more than she wanted me. My approval was an obstacle to be managed. She did not make a choice for us. She made a choice against me, my affair. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but her secret, her lie, that was a declaration of war. What happens now? I leaned forward, my voice low. I spoke of my love, a love that transcended biology, a love she betrayed. I am their father in every way that matters. I told the camera, my legal position. Emmett thought he could weaken it. He thought biology was everything. He did not understand. This was never about DNA. It was about family. Our family. Vivian understood for a moment. She saw the truth. Colleen was the liar. Colleen was the cheater. For 48 hours, the world made sense. Then the clinic records came. Emmett's little trick. His narrative flip. He painted her betrayal as a reproductive choice. He tried to make her a hero, a martyr. The world bought the story. Overnight, she was a saint, a woman who built a family in spite of her terrible husband. They talked of her strength, her sacrifice. They did not call it what it was: deceit. She carried those children, yes, but they were the product of a lie, all her work. The nursery, the names, the hearts on the photos, it was all a lie. My humiliation was their victory. My mother's call was the final twist of the knife. Someone else's problem now, she said. My own mother, believing their story, forgetting that my only crime was loving a woman who had already erased me. My contributions had not stopped. They had been stolen. Then came the doctor, Nina Prescott, another woman in Colleen's corner, another voice to testify to her sainthood. She told Dorothy what Colleen had said: make sure my mother gets the babies, not Grant. See? The proof was right there. It was always her plan, to cut me out, to take everything. It was never about my pride. It was about her control. I wanted the reporter to understand. I wanted everyone to see the pattern, the careful, quiet, deliberate steps she took to dismantle my life, even from the grave. I closed my eyes for the camera, as if in pain. Inside, I was memorizing their names: Prescott, Emmett, Dorothy, everyone who would pay. I looked straight into the camera. I let them see the moisture in my eyes. I loved my wife, I said. My voice was steady, full of a sorrow I had perfected. I thought we built a family together. I thought those children were mine. The words were true. That was the most painful part. I did believe it. Finding out the truth was devastating. They had taken my past and my future in a single phone call. The reporter asked about Vivian. I admitted my mistakes, a flawed man, a husband who strayed, but I never stopped loving Colleen. I never stopped believing I was their father. That was the core of it. That belief was stolen from me, without my knowledge, without my consent. The segment was a masterpiece. It aired twice. Then it hit the internet. For a few hours, it worked. The sympathy poured in. I was the victim, the wronged husband. Then the tide turned. The internet is not a room I can control. It is a mob. The questions started. Why the girlfriend? Why the life insurance? Why the signature? They did not understand. Emmett did not wait. He released his evidence, the signature, the money, the condo. He presented it as a crime. I saw it as survival. Securing my assets against a woman I now knew I could not trust. The screen glowed with their hatred, their judgment. They called me a fraud, a thief, a monster. They were wrong, all of them. I was a husband, and I was betrayed. It was a simple, elegant solution. Vivian was the future. This was always the plan. That text message was not an ending. It was a promise of freedom once the complications were settled. I knew Colleen would sign the papers. She always did what was expected of her. Then the world turned on me. It was swift and senseless, a fury built from foolish captions and shared pain. They saw themselves in her, the ones who claimed they were cheated, the ones who called themselves paranoid, the ones who were simply unstable. Colleen was never a victim. She was an architect, a ghost building a case against me from her perfectly organized nursery. She fought a quiet, bitter war, and then Vivian made that call, the first betrayal. It happened on a Thursday. I imagine him at his desk, that vulture Calloway. The phone rings. A weak voice on the other end. Vivian. She said he needed to hear her side. She went to him the next morning, a ghost of the woman I knew. No makeup, hair tied back, a mess. She looked like a woman who had given up. She had finally stopped playing her part. She told him everything. She told him about Danielle, a meaningless distraction, a detail. She discovered the text just as Colleen had. History repeating its foolish mistakes. But this time was different. This time there was no leverage, just weakness. She handed him recordings, conversations she had stolen from me, our private plans, twisted into something ugly. I was simply planning for the future. I was teaching Vivian how to handle Dorothy. I was creating a timeline for the court. I told her we needed to be a united front. A single father never wins. The image is everything. I was trying to build a stable home for those children. She asked me if I loved them. A foolish question. I needed them. I needed a mother in the picture. I needed the image to be perfect. Colleen had been a prop. Vivian was supposed to be a better one, a more willing one. She looked at that ring I gave her, a simple piece of jewelry. Then she started talking about insurance, about things she could not possibly understand. She misunderstood everything. The forged signature was a technicality, a necessity. The money was for our future, a future she was supposed to share. I was building a life while she was pregnant with children that were not mine. She slid the ring across the desk, a piece of theater. She claimed I never loved her. She was wrong. I loved the idea of her. I loved the role she was meant to play. Calloway asked if she would testify. Of course she said yes, the ultimate performance. Dorothy listened to the news. She sat in her hotel room and judged me. She claims she does not forgive Vivian. What a hypocrite. She used a snake to protect a different snake's nest. Colleen would have done the same. She was always practical, always a fighter. They became a public spectacle. She pushed that stroller through the park. The stroller Colleen had ordered. She even left the shipping tag on. A pathetic, calculated detail. A little paper flag for the world to see. A receipt from a dead woman. It was all a performance. She walked for 2 hours playing the part of the grieving, devoted grandmother. She never thought about me, only about how to tear down what I was building. I heard a sound once, a strange noise from one of the children. It sounded like a mistake. The final hearing was on a Monday. The room felt cold. The air was heavy. The storm was coming for me. The room was against me from the start. A silent jury. Dorothy wore that same navy dress, a costume. She clutched that purse with the letter inside, her magic charm. I arrived by myself. Whitfield was gone. Laurel stopped, taking my calls. They ran when the story turned. When the family name was dragged through the mud, Calloway presented his case. A slow, methodical execution. He showed them documents, the condo, the inheritance, each paper a lie they had built, a story twisted by Colleen's obsessive need for order. She had built this case against me long ago. It was airtight. Then came Vivian. She took the stand and told her story, her version of the truth. She spoke of timelines and text messages. She played the recordings of my private thoughts. She painted me as a monster, as a man who loved an image. She was not wrong about that. The image is everything. The perfect surgeon with the perfect life. They were all just characters. When they refused to read their lines, I had to change the script. My new lawyer tried to fight back. It was useless. The narrative was already written. Then the doctor testified. She repeated Colleen's dying wish, words meant to sound powerful. Jolene spoke about my wife's mind, about laughter that was no longer there, a friend who should have tried harder, a friend who did nothing. The Guardian delivered her report, weeks of observation, a recommendation that was clear before she even started. She chose the grandmother. Of course she did. She spoke of my deception, my misconduct. She said I did not put the children first. The judge took 2 hours, a meaningless pause before the inevitable. I watched Dorothy and her friends, a silent wall of smug certainty. They did not need to speak. They had already won. The judge returned. She put on her glasses to read my sentence. The courtroom was silent. She spoke about the children. She found in favor of Dorothy Brennan. My heart did not hammer. It grew still and cold. She gave a stranger full legal and physical custody of those children. I closed my eyes. The words landed like stones. She ordered me to repay the funds. She sent the insurance claim to the district attorney. A fraud investigation. I sat perfectly still. My lawyer whispered something. I shook my head. I would not let them see me break. It was not my fault. They were the ones who had rewritten the story. It was the motion of a defeated man. My license was suspended because of her lies. My own mother was barred from seeing my children. The judge stared down from her bench. She spoke to Dorothy, the old crow. She called my wife's meticulous revenge a record of love. The court claimed to honor her wishes. It was a farce, a theft. Dorothy looked up, her eyes dry and hard, a single triumphant nod. She thanked the judge. Her voice was steady. Outside, the lawyer handed her another piece of the trap. A letter. Colleen's final blade. It was meant to be delivered now. After the heist was complete, the old woman held it. She felt its weight. She had no idea of the true weight of her crime. She would not read it there. She would not read it in the car. She would drive to the cemetery for her performance. She would sit by the headstone under a pathetic sun. Daffodils. Colleen had said they were resilient, a convenient metaphor for her cruelty. Dorothy finally opened the envelope. The letter would be full of poison. It would say the children were hers, not ours. It would blame me for her shame. Her secrecy about the donor was a choice, a knife she hid for years. Those children were a project. They were her creation. She whispered lies to them every night. Lies about me. Lies about Dorothy. She painted the old woman as a saint who would love them. She claimed she was not afraid of her own end. She was only afraid of them living with me. That was her excuse. The paper trail was her weapon. The lawyer was her accomplice. Her will was the final legal blow. She thought Dorothy could handle it. 3 infants for a woman of 61, a foolish, sentimental notion. She built the old woman up, a hero who raised her alone, a pillar of strength. It was all a fantasy. She would ask Dorothy to tell them stories, to erase me from their lives, to tell them she wanted them. A selfish, desperate want. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation, a perfect farewell designed to inflict maximum damage. Dorothy would fold it just so. She would carry it with her, a daily reminder of her victory, of my defeat. She stood. She washed her face at a public spigot, a theatrical gesture of renewal. Her reflection showed my wife's eyes, a permanent theft. She went back to the grave to deliver her report. The wind was her audience. A bird sang her victory song. She believed Colleen had saved them. She believed a dead woman had orchestrated this. She touched the stone as if touching a hand. Then she walked to her car. My brother was waiting. His wife was waiting. My children were in the car with a stranger, a hired woman with a soft voice. One of my daughters was already asleep on her shoulder. Betrayal was so easy. Dorothy got in. She saw them in the mirror. My children. She smiled. It was the smile of a thief who got away clean. The smile of someone who had won. She drove my children away from their history. 6 months passed. My house on Birchwood Lane was changing. It was being overwritten, erased slowly, naturally. Like a disease, the bedroom was painted a sickening yellow, Colleen's favorite color, the color of cowardice and deceit. She kept the furniture, my furniture, but the walls were a monument to her victory, a new beginning for them. She put the photographs back, every smiling lie. Then she added her own, the triplets, month by month, a timeline of her conquest growing right beside them. My children's milestones were now her trophies. A smile, a tooth, a clumsy reach for a spoon. Colleen's garden was brought back to life. Dorothy pretended she knew what she was doing. She read my wife's journals, another set of instructions from the grave. She learned about soil and sun. Everything grew. It felt like the world was conspiring with them. I pleaded guilty. A deal made to end the bleeding. I received probation, a fine, a permanent stain. My practice was gone. My partners voted me out. My name was now only a footnote in legal records. Laurel, my own mother, stopped speaking to me. She was not sorry for me. She was just gone. The scandal was a stain. Reputation is the only thing of value. It is our oxygen. It is absolute. My son had turned the Ashford name into a disgrace. That girl Vivian disappeared. The correct move. She sold the property Grant foolishly bought her. The funds were returned, a neat financial bandage on a gaping wound. She fled the state. A new beginning. I received a report of a message to Dorothy. A pointless apology. I am certain Dorothy read it. I am also certain she did nothing. A silent admission of her powerlessness. It sits on her phone. A reminder that my family corrects its errors, that guilt is a tool. The woman who nearly ruined my son also saved his children. A messy, inconvenient truth that Dr. Nina Prescott is now a frequent guest. She comes every 2 weeks. She brings charts and false sympathy. She brings soup made in her own kitchen, a calculated gesture of warmth. She examines the infants. She asks Dorothy about their routines. It is all a performance. Then she stays for coffee. She sits at that plain kitchen table. She speaks of meaningless things. The weather, television, books. She talks of her own dead mother. A pathetic attempt to bond over loss. They have become friends. An absurd alliance. A 61-year-old woman and a 40-year-old doctor. United by the woman they both failed. United by a promise I intend to watch them break. Jolene visits every Sunday, punctual. She brings baked goods from a shop on Highland Avenue. The same one she frequented with Colleen. A sentimental ritual. She brings 3 types of cream cheese, one for each of them, a flavor for a ghost. After the food, Jolene reads to the infants. She uses foolish voices for the animals. A low one for the bear, a fast one for the mouse. Her own voice is an imitation of comfort. They say the boy, Teddy, laughs. The same sound he made before. Predictable. A mechanical sort of joy. Every Sunday. My mother would have been better at this, Jolene tells them. She holds one of the infants. It chews on a book. She says she does the best bear voice she can. She wants it to sound real. A pointless effort. She promises to keep trying. Fletch constructed some wooden shack in their yard. It consumed 3 of his weekends. He came from Portland every Friday. He worked endlessly. He used fine cedar, strong steel bolts, a tool that belonged to his father. He painted it green, her second favorite color. How pedestrian. The structure is not for the infants. They are only 6 months old. They cannot even sit up. The structure is for a future I will not acknowledge. For climbing and dreaming. For secrets. A place to be closer to the sky. Closer to her. He attached a small sign to it. Carved cedar. 2 words. The Collie House. He presented it to Dorothy one Sunday. She stood in the yard looking at it. The green paint was garish against the oak trees. The sign reflected the light. She would have adored it, Dorothy said. She would have complained about the paint job, Fletch answered. Then Dorothy laughed. A real laugh. The kind I thought we had successfully silenced, but it was there. Proof that some weeds always grow back. In the evenings, after the infants are asleep, Dorothy sits in their room. She placed a rocking chair in the middle, between the three beds, to reach them all. The girl on the left, the other girl in the center, the boy on the right. The chair was something Colleen found at a sale. She restored it herself, sanding and painting. It supposedly smells of lemon oil, the kind Colleen always used, a cheap bottle from a common store. Dorothy rocks. The chair makes a soft noise, a steady, irritating rhythm, the sound of something mundane surviving. She watches the three cribs, three mobiles turn above them, stars and moons. Three dim lights shaped like stars are plugged into the wall. They cast a pale light. Colleen ordered them. They were delivered 2 days after the funeral. Dorothy installed them. Margot sleeps on her stomach. A defiant gesture. She will turn over no matter how she is placed. Stubborn. I recognized the trait. It was Colleen's. Bridget sleeps on her back. Perfectly still. Her eyes move as she dreams. I wonder what such creatures dream of. Nothing important. Teddy sleeps on his side. His fist is near his mouth. He is the quietest of the three. The most passive. He waits for his food. He waits to be held. He waits for the others to be silent. Then he makes a small noise. Not a demand. An announcement. I am here. It means nothing. Dorothy rocks and she watches them breathe. 3 small bodies. 3 small lives. They call them a miracle. I call them a complication. A problem a woman refused to let die. People will frame this as a tragedy. I know the narrative. A young mother, a faithless husband, a legal battle, a scandal, an obituary that says nothing. But that is not the story. The real story is a woman who caused immense trouble, who gathered papers and files, who changed her will, who wrote letters and made plans, who prepared for war while pretending to prepare for motherhood. The story is a woman who fought her final battle in secret and won from her grave. Dorothy stood. She moved to the window. The backyard was black. The playhouse was a dark shape. The garden was dormant. The porch light made a small, golden circle. She took a purple marker from the windowsill. It was from Colleen's desk, the same marker she used on the medical photos, the color of bruises. Dorothy removed the cap. She drew a little heart on the wall near one crib, then another, and another, 3 hearts, crooked. A grandmother's hand is weak, but they are there. Permanent ink on the wall. She replaced the cap. She left the marker on the sill, for the future, for when the infants can hold it, for them to draw their own marks. She looked at the time, 11:45. A new day was coming. She should rest. She has 3 burdens who will wake her at 5:30, demanding everything, and she will give it. All of it, every morning, every night, every bottle, every diaper, every song, every scraped knee and first word and nightmare. She will give them everything, because that is what Colleen orchestrated, and because that is what Dorothy does, what she has always done. She started to hum, a tune she sang to Colleen, the one her own mother sang to her, the one Colleen sang to her own stomach, a melody of women. No words, just the sound of a legacy I do not recognize. The infants slept, the starlights glowed, the house was still. Outside, the first stars appeared, above the green playhouse, with its foolish name and its promise of a future I have already discounted. She has 3 of everything now. 3 mouths, 3 futures, 3 hearts that beat because Colleen stopped. And Dorothy Brennan, 61 years old, tired and gray, and fiercely, completely, stubbornly alive. She would trade nothing, not for this world, not for the next. This tale offers a single truth they can cling to, that love continues after death. A mother's love builds things that last. It writes letters that echo. It protects children she abandoned. If this narrative affected you, if it felt real, then perform a small action. Click the like button. Leave a comment. State which part was most affecting. Share this with a woman who needs validation of her own strength. And if you are not yet a follower, press subscribe. Ring the bell so you never miss a similar tale. We exist because of you. Every like, every comment, every share, it tells us to continue. To tell these stories, stories that have an impact, stories that remain. Thank you for listening to the end. You are why we produce this. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.